Let's see. This is... Sorry. Brazil accuses U.S. missionary of putting isolated tribes' lives at risk. And this is not the guy from a couple of weeks ago. That was John Allen Cho. I can't remember. Yeah, it's not him. It's a new guy.
Is this guy dead too?
No, he got arrested. So Brazil's Indigenous Affairs Department, FUNAI, has accused an American missionary of exposing an isolated indigenous tribe to disease and possibly death. Steve Campbell, a Christian missionary, entered the area occupied by the Jaime tribe last month. I'm not even going to try.
Yeah.
One of the few dozen tribes in Brazil that has no contact with the outside world.
Is it bad that, to me, the funniest and most unique part of this story is that the portion of the Brazil's government for the protection of like indigenous species is FUNAI, which is like funny, as if the affairs of all right,
Indigenous Affairs Department.
Indigenous Affairs Department, isn't that funny? No, all right,
no,
all right,
that's cool.
Anyways, so
tell me about the genocide.
Basically, he was there evangelizing to some other tribes that already had contact with Westerners, but he says that he got lost when he was using his GPS and he accidentally stumbled on this isolated tribe. That's what he's claiming. Is he was just a happy coincidence, and he's not at fault.
And
I don't know about that.
And while lost in the Brazilian rainforest, he found new people, and instead of asking them for directions, decided to preach the word of God to them?
Yeah, pretty much. I don't know about this guy. I really don't buy his claim that it was an accident. And he's a full-grown adult. He has kids. He doesn't have the excuse that John Allen had of, being a very young man that was heavily indoctrinated and, wide-eyed.
Right. Well, he's an
youngster.
old man.
Yeah. He really should have known better than to be putting these people at risk. I feel like he has less excuse.
I think that what we need is some sort of intro where I am the devil's advocate.
Yeah, bring it on.
Because I don't know what his motivations were. I can't read his mind. I don't know if he accidentally stumbled on him or whatever. But if there's a tribe of indigenous people that have no contact with the outside world, you'd think somebody would put up some signs or something. Because if the goal is to protect them from, a Trail of Tears type incident, then I would say the Brazilian government and perhaps that tribe and some others have some responsibility. So I don't know where there are signs saying, turn back, you're going to kill everybody.
That's fair. I do have some bad news, though, in terms of, FUNAI, I think.
Funny.
Those of you who aren't aware, the new Brazilian president, Jair Bolsonaro.
Yeah, he's the real threat.
He gained a lot of support from the evangelical, and it was basically his anti-abortion stance, and he's very anti-indigenous tribes people as well.
Yeah,
and he appointed. Let's see, I've actually got a quote from him. He said, "There is no indigenous territory where there aren't minerals, gold, tin, and magnesium in these lands, especially in the Amazon, the richest area in the world. I'm not getting into this nonsense of defending land for Indians."
Is that so? Presumably that's translated out of Portuguese.
Yeah.
Portuguese. Is the word the word translated into Indians?
I don't know. There was indigenous before, so I don't know what.
This is from The Guardian.
There's
also a Facebook thing said, "It's a shame the Brazilian cavalry wasn't as efficient as the Americans who exterminated the Indians."
Jesus.
Wow.
What?
Right.
Yeah. There's so much to unpack there, not just the fact that there are still Native Americans or their descendants, never mind. That's not what the word exterminated means, which is the most pedantic thing to object to in that heinous statement.
I just think, we're focus on the jackass's clear bigotry.
Oh, yeah.
I don't give a crap about these people, so let's not talk about it.
Yeah.
No matter where the responsibility rests, he has to own some of that responsibility as their current president.
Well, he openly carries the label of the Trump of
Brazil.
Yeah, the Trump of Brazil.
He's like, yes, I am.
He's absolutely
Then he should build a wall around the
Yeah.
indigenous community.
And what's extremely worrisome is he's in charge of the lungs of the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And actually, the FUNAI, he actually appointed an evangelical preacher and congressional aide who also co-founded Atini, a controversial group that evangelizes to indigenous communities and is subject to an investigation currently by public prosecutors for inciting racial hatred against indigenous peoples.
What?
So I'm going to go ahead and make a prediction and say that either nothing happens to this guy legally or he's going to get a pardon.
Yeah,
I don't think there's going to be any consequences for this
I don't know
guy.
how pardons work. I actually, for the most part, don't know how the Brazilian government works.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know if they do pardons.
Possibly. Because
Let me just arrest the family members of everybody who disagrees with me, and then there's no reason for a pardon.
There you
All
go.
right.
I don't know whether that's a specific reference to a specific thing or just to strongman tactics in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. See, it's not fun when you make a joke and then other people just sort of stare at you and analyze it. It's not as funny.
Well, Jane, you had an opinion about.
Yeah, no. So I tend to think a little bit differently about, because a lot of the people that I know that we know sort of default to, here's an indigenous population, they have this land, leave them alone, right? We should definitely, like, one, if someone else has land, you shouldn't take it from them, right?
Right.
But there seems to be this underlying value placed on, no, preserve this ancient culture and ancient way of life by having people live it. And in general, right, if there's a foreign nation that refuses aid, we don't force them to take things. However, that doesn't mean we don't offer it, right? And if there were people who were subject to, again, I don't know how well off the indigenous peoples of Brazil are, but
Under Bolsonaro, they're not doing well.
well, there's that. But I mean, as far as comparing the lifestyles of, I don't know this specific example, but I've run into this idea of like, no, there's something pure and beautiful about ancient ways of life that I wholeheartedly disagree with.
Yeah, I could view it as easily being a version of a naturalistic fallacy. I think the thing that people are trying to value is the individual and liberty and freedom of those groups, and let's not run right over them. I think I'm in the same boat as you, and I was thinking about saying something kind of similar or along those lines, which is one of the reasons why I went straight to devil's advocate and arguing that the government and that tribe bear some responsibility, because it's the 21st century, and if there's a group of people who are completely isolated from everybody else, it's sort of incumbent upon them to make that clear. That don't cross this line. And hey, if they want to shoot anybody who crosses the line after they put up signs, then I guess,
Yeah.
That was a lot more crystal clear with John Allen Chow, because he actually had to go out to that island.
Yeah.
And they were very, very secluded.
He had to bribe people to break the law to get him there.
Right.
He knew what he was doing. Yeah. Whether this person knew what he was doing or not, I definitely agree with that. But the degree to which you're required to put up a billboard versus put up a fence versus just
If you're in the
make
heart of the
it
Amazon
broadly
forest,
make it
it's
broadly known,
pretty difficult.
because there's only so many ways to get to the Amazon forest without
There's another aspect to this too, which is okay. So this group is cut off from the rest of society, presumably voluntarily.
Yeah.
Or have people left that tribe and gone out and
I couldn't say.
I don't know. So here's my problem with this is right now there are children being born isolated from modern society.
Yes.
And they're not being afforded the opportunity, and many of them are not being afforded the opportunity to be free.
Yes.
Right?
You can have an isolated community in the United States, but you still need to vaccinate your kids, and you still need to follow the laws of the United States and have religious freedom,
Yeah.
you know, and general freedom.
Yeah.
Oh, there was actually a separate part of the article that I didn't go ahead and underline because I wasn't sure if it was going to come up. But a while back ago, fairly recently, there was a provision that allowed indigenous tribes to opt out or opt into staying isolated. Not sure how you really do that if they're
That's the
if
thing.
they're
Is that,
isolated. Salerno got rid of that, so they can no longer opt to stay isolated.
Yeah. Well, if that's the case, then there may not be, because he changed what the law is, there may
Yeah.
not even be a potential crime here.
Well, I think
I mean, it's still there's still a big problem.
Yeah, well, they're wanting to
It may be
take him
that
up
he-
on charges of potential genocide because of exposing them to pathogens.
pathogens, yeah. So it's then becomes an issue of public health, right? So I would say to that, it kind of sounds like he removed the part of the law that would allow the indigenous tribe to choose whether or not they were contacted by the rest of the country, which to me sounds like, well, it's not your choice. I haven't changed what the outcome is yet.
Yeah.
So it still may be.
And once again, we're commenting about what Brazilians' laws are when we don't
Yeah.
know versus what they should be when we don't know.
And here's special guest, Brazilian lawyer. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting because the similar things I think happen because there's a lot of cultural divides and cultural isolation that happens for reasons that gets justified by culture or that occurs because of someone's religion, right? Like you can say you can have an isolated group in the United States, but you still have to vaccinate your children, you have to do all these things, et cetera.
Yeah, there's a limit to how isolated you can be. And
Yeah.
I think there's generally good reasons for that. And one of the things is that, you know, when you live outside the law, you don't have the protections of it. And
Right.
so, you know, now I've got my little enclave of indigenous people, and we're living our life and we're doing our own thing, but we are surrounded by and essentially part of a country that we're either not participating with or contributing to. And I'm fine with that in a limited freedom. I mean, because I don't think the isolation can actually maintain. You know,
Well,
at
that's
some
true.
point, you're going to come
Yeah,
in contact
eventually.
with somebody, and then something like this is going to happen. So what there needs to be is better policies in place
To prevent this?
to either prevent this from happening or to address, you know, yes, you can have your group out here and people aren't allowed to trespass on your property or whatever else, but you live in a modern world where there's, you know, vaccines and diseases you haven't been exposed to, and we cannot possibly be expected to protect people from everything they're going to come in contact with, and you have essentially chosen to live outside of those protections. I'm not.
Well, so
making
that's another thing I was
excuses for the
saying
guy.
is are you saying that a group an isolated sort of community, a relatively isolated community that, you know, it's a one dirt road town that's, you know, I won't say Amish because I don't want to, but something like that, a minority, a small religious community. They choose not to engage in the rest of society. We only know they're there because every now and then, you know, a drunk college kid stumbles down the road, and when he does that, a group of people from this village carts him back on a horse and buggy.
And M. Night Shyamalan makes a movie.
And M. Night Shyamalan makes a
right.
movie about them. Spoiler, but it doesn't matter because that was. Well, I was about to say one of his not good movies,
Yeah.
but
Keep going
most of his
with your
the
point.
point was, do you think that at that point they can opt out of public education or vaccinating their children?
My take on this, my reflexive thought is no, that we have in much the same way that we have a civic duty and responsibility to all of the citizens of the United States. That would include indigenous peoples living on reservations and other things like that. And there has to be some shared parity of responsibility. You know, you can remove yourself from culture to some extent, but maybe not wholly. I don't know what the what the right answer is, and I'm certainly not making
Right.
excuses for what happened in this incident, other than I don't know that I can just blame random missionary. If it's at least plausible that he accidentally stumbled upon this, which I don't know how likely that is. But if that's even in the realm of plausibility, then other steps need to be taken by somebody other than him. Because now somebody's going to go out there on purpose.
Well, especially now
Wait,
that there
because-
likely is not going to be any legal consequences,
Right.
especially.
And if the government is hostile to all of this, and so now we have this thing where we're not only not protecting the freedoms that we should, but we're essentially taking away some of the freedoms that we should not take away. And no matter how involved you think somebody else should be in society, I think those laws generally come down to where there's overlap. Like we would vaccinate for herd immunity. We have responsibilities to one another to the extent that our lives overlap. But, you know, I get to watch whatever show I want to watch in my house, and I don't have to leave my house as long as I keep, you know, paying all my bills and don't get evicted. And I don't have to let anybody in my house.
Yeah.
But I still have duties and responsibilities to the society that I'm a part of. I don't know how that works once you have an indigenous group that's untouched by outsiders. I don't know.
Can there be
It gets
cultural?
complicated.
Can there be cultural genocide? I mean, where you kill the culture of a group. I mean, we tried to do that with the Native Americans by educating their children in, you know.
European settlers tried to do that.
I'm pretty sure Richard Spencer would say yes.
I wasn't going to point out that that's a phrase that white supremacists use as well, but
See, I think it can happen.
Yeah.
And this will probably be the minority view. I don't give a rat's ass if cultures die out. I don't have this.
how is it that we agree on so much and haven't spoken about it? Because cultures are less important than the lives of the peoples in
Yes.
them, and if they have to leave all of their culture behind, but all of them survive, it's better than half of them dying and their culture remaining.
Yeah, it's because you're my son.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
No, but
I
I've
agree.
had this.
Yeah.
You know, I have people who are close to me who really care a lot about their heritage and their history and what led up to that. I'm forward-looking. Yeah. I had ancestors who helped start the Southern Baptist Convention. They were French Huguenots escaping religious persecution, coming over here doing all this. It's an interesting thing, but it has no impact on my life, and it's not something that I care about preserving. But what I also recognize is that the people who care about preserving those things have to be permitted to do it. I'm not going to come in and intentionally trample it. But personally, I don't care if this traditional part of any culture vanishes for the same reason that I don't care that blacksmiths are getting unemployed. You know, they're no longer having to shoe horses all the time. It's called progress, and I generally view it as a positive.
Well, so what I will say to that is I don't want anything to disappear from history just for pragmatic reasons, right? So when a language dies, right, I think that can be bad because then our knowledge of languages is diminished. However, if fewer people speak a language or a language isn't used anywhere else, then that's sort of whatever. Like, I'm not worried about Latin going away because the Catholic Church will keep it alive forever.
In Dominus Patris.
The thing, the caveat I have for these isolated cultures and things is that if they exist in a larger modern civilization, somehow it has to be guaranteed that every member of that isolated community has the option, if they so desire, to leave.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
No, just why with the Rumspringa with the Amish, I'm like, you know what? You're doing this correctly.
There are exceptions, and actually, I can't give too much in the way of details, but there are a number of small towns in the United States that are essentially run by religious denominations and organizations. And I'm
Taliban.
hoping to explore those for a project because I think there's a concern about whether or not somebody's civil rights are being violated.
Oh,
There's
hell.
still
They are.
Americans, and if you have a town rule that men have to walk down one side of the street and women have to walk down a different side of the street, and if somebody who's not part of your religious community moves in, and all of a sudden they find it very difficult to get their water and their power turned on because you're essentially trying to run out all the people who don't fit in with your little thing. I would agree that individual communities get to make their own rules, but within limits. The Constitution still applies, and our duty to each other still applies.
Yeah, I mean, where do you draw the line if they're raising their children by lying to them about the outside world?
Yes.
They can't make an educated decision on whether they want to stay or go. So
Yeah.
you've abrogated their rights at that point. You've removed their ability to choose.
Yeah, it essentially
You've imprisoned them.
It's no longer an informed choice. It reminds me in many other ways where we would talk about things like incest comes up from time to time when people are wanting to do the moral thing, and I'm like, if two properly informed adults who happen to be related by blood want to have sex, that's their business. But if you have to deal with the situation where somebody has been isolated and groomed for that position, and that's fundamentally different.
Yeah.
Who knew indigenous affairs were this complicated?
People that had looked into them. Yeah. What's interesting for me is I realized the other day when I was talking to someone that when it comes to any kinds of conflicts that play into this, I definitely value international law over historical context and narrative and all of these things, right? So for me, the main issues between the United States doing things on indigenous lands is, the United States signed various treaties with the native peoples. What are the terms of those treaties? And that doesn't get covered in the news today.
Yeah, the other thing is, there needs to be a separate consideration of whether or not the terms of those treaties were in fact fair, not just the fact that you managed to get somebody to agree with it, because that's how con artists work.
Yeah, sign this treaty.
Right.
There's a context here.
Or buy this car at my used car lot at 19.5% interest. If you have no other options, people are essentially, for practical reasons, forced into making decisions that they wouldn't otherwise. And I think that we have some responsibility to make sure that the contract, because I'm not a fucking libertarian.
Right.
I don't think that just because you can get somebody to sign a contract, you win.
Or follow my commandments, or you go straight to hell forever.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Gun to your head.
It's a nice soul you got there.
Yeah.
All right.
Shame.
Well, we've gotten a little bit off track, so I'm going to...
And for our next story...